Gentlemen, here we are at the Old West Cigar Shop in beautiful downtown Colorado Springs, Colorado, just before the snowpocalypse coming. And you guys are here in town for Lead 2021, and glad to have you in town. And as a result of that powerful event, Drew got a ton of questions that we didn't have a chance to get to last episode of Unfiltered. We got through a handful of those, and we're going to try to plow through a bunch of these. We're on a 90-second clock. Danny, the Nazi over there, the time Nazi, is making sure we stay in the 90. You got the over on me. I got the under several times. You won't admit it. And so, Drew, 90 seconds. You're on the clock.
Well, hey, I first want to just thank each of you guys for showing up and making my first MC gig delightful, number one, as well as did our audience. And then, of course, when we got to do our little session together, as we always do, the conversation is fantastic. The engagement is always great. The energy is spectacular. But when we get engagement from our members in the audience, it makes it even better. So you are the reason that we do what we do. And so please submit your questions through the Ask the Experts channel. When we're doing live stuff, just show up, contribute, give us the content, and we will respond. And so we've got some
Gary
questions.
and I are pretty easy to work with, right?
You guys are fantastic to work with.
We're buzzed.
Yeah.
The mark of true professionals.
So we have some questions right from our audience here. I am a small company with 6 employees. I am currently an EGI member. Certainly I would have to be, right? Because that's the only way to get in and give us a question. My question is that I would like to have a weekly meeting to start working on standards and company atmosphere. Where do I start? Compound question. Is there a system in place or a video series, I'm betting $100 there is, video series to show for 15 minutes on a morning?
The answer is yes, the EGI website, Contractor Best Practices Library, under company planning. There's an entire group of videos on company meeting rhythms, company agendas. There are sample agendas. They're blank. Of course, you would have to fill in the information that you would want to talk about in your company meetings. And so that's where I would start. Probably the second layer of that is, why are you doing the meetings? Like, meetings to have meetings is never really a good idea. So you want to have a structure around what are you trying to achieve with your meeting rhythm. So we use scaling up. Some people might use traction. There's lots of different ways that you can approach that. But I would use the tech that's on the site first, and then I would set up the agendas based on what you're trying to accomplish.
So there's a framework on the site for the meeting, and then if you need content specifically for the meeting, there's that also on the website.
Yeah, service tech selling, there's the LMS with sales process, there's service tech process, there's sales management, it's all there.
All right.
I would say that the benefits of a weekly company-wide meeting are very significant in terms of building cultural rapport, connection. I would just caution, don't think you have to have it all figured out before you get started.
Yeah.
Right? A 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. People in our industry tend to be very technically gifted.
Yes.
Right? That's a good thing. The bad thing about that in terms of accomplishment and achievement is sometimes technical people want to know the 100th step before they start the first step.
Yep.
I would say get your crew together, share some customer testimonials, right? Talk about a great install. Talk about a great service call. Just get started in the process. And yes, there's tons of training specifically from Gary on the Contractor U website. There's hundreds of hours of content in 10 and 15 and 20 minute segments that you can run during those meetings. But just start talking about your customers and your people. And
you've done an amazing job with the Cracking the Code session. So, I mean, you obviously as a business owner, as a manager, as a leader, you're gonna have to go out there and look at those and see which ones are relevant to what you want to cover, right? But I mean, you've done a great thing where these videos are like, what, 15 to 20 minutes max? Well,
the whole show is 30 minutes, but you can take any segment. Right. Andy cuts those up into various segments, 10, 15, 12 minutes a piece, whatever it is. Run one of those and just have everybody give their opinion on it. What do you think about what you just saw in the video?
And I loved how you said also, you don't have to be the person all the time, right? That you may have a star employee that's doing something great and having some level of success, and say, listen, I want you to talk today. Yep. Tell us, how you were struggling, now you're not. How did you change it? What are you doing? So you can make your employees shine that day. You can have a book club where you basically assign a book and you read a chapter, but you then say, okay, you're assigned chapter 1, you're assigned chapter 2, I'm assigned chapter 3, right? And so we all have to read all 3 chapters, but you'll give the report, right?
Just for the record, ashined is a product of Willet. When you said ashined, I think you meant assigned, but that's
assigned. Okay, it could be a product of the
Unfiltered. It's the 4th or 5th episode this week.
Highly probable. Next question. All right. Also, YouTube videos. There's a lot of great YouTube videos that you can just grab and use those as talking points too. All right, what are some things that the techs can do while setting up a lead to give the salesperson, if again, assuming it's going to be a tech lead, right, to give the salesperson a better chance for success? And I'm going
to give you one tip. You have that conversation with the homeowner. There are several tips we could give, but I'm under 90-second restraint, 15 of which I just wasted. So what I would say is, when the homeowner agrees, yes, they want to talk to a comfort advisor, before you pick up that phone and call your lead coordinator or CSR, whomever it is you call to book that lead, the last thing that you want to ask the homeowner before you dial that number is, Mr. Homeowner, this is something you want me to do, correct? Get that psychological click, yet I'm asking for this. This is something I want. Nothing worse for a comfort advisor to show up on a call and the homeowner says, well, the technician said I should just get a price. Make them commit. Mr. Homeowner, Mrs. Homeowner, this is something you want me to do, correct? Make them do that psychological click that I want this person to come over and get this information.
So I would second that, 100% in agreement. I probably would only add that I think your technicians would benefit from social styles and personality training so that they could identify the social styles. So one of the things we like our guys to do is to be able to give the comfort advisor some insights about the social styles of the people that we're going to be doing business with, so that we can mentally and physically prepare for how we're going to actually interface with that client. It's an underrated idea. It's very seldom used, but more sophisticated sales process companies use that as a technique. It's something that you want them to write down in their notes and then put that in your CRM, because if you actually get that customer, it's then embedded there. So your CSRs and dispatchers will benefit, not just the comfort advisor.
So you're talking about social styles and communication types is what you're talking about. If I wanted to learn about that as a business owner, where would I learn that?
You might get that on the technician selling and communication model. You also get that in the comfort advisor technician communication
model. On the EGI website?
On the EGI website.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. Okay, and I would say make sure technicians do not give ballparks to customers on price. So, all right. For the last year or so, we have had one particular comfort advisor that is never happy with the number of leads, constantly thinking he's entitled to more leads. They're talking about you, Weldon. Thinking he's entitled to more leads, should get more tech leads than the other guys. Actually, it's my older brother, etc. It's killing morale, but he is very good at sales.
The numbers don't lie. We talked about this the other day, a batting order.
Meritocracy.
A meritocracy, right? The numbers don't lie. A lot of times, that comfort advisor thinks he's the best. He may or may not be. If you track your numbers, you track whatever you're tracking, whether it's conversion rate, revenue per lead, whatever your metric is, whoever's at the top of that batting order, that's who you're going to feed the hot hand. And if it's that person, then they can do it with a clean conscience. When other people complain, hey, get yourself to the top of the batting order. You're next to go. But the reality is, you got to measure to know that stuff. There's nothing wrong with feeding these leads belong to the company. They don't belong to the comfort advisor, right? And so we have to distribute them according to what's best for everybody that works in that building. If there's 30 people that work in your company, that's 30 mortgages, 30 trips to the grocery store, 30 boxes of diapers, 30 car payments. There's a lot of responsibility that comes from managing those leads. And it's not about one person. You know, Gary does so much work on teamwork and culture. It's about the entire company, about the organism, and no single person is more important than the organism.
I agree. Fantastic.
100% agree. I would say define the expectations for the comfort advisor. You should coach that individual, make sure they understand that they're behaving in a way that's negative. We would coach to that expectation and standard. And if they're not going to adjust their behavior patterns based on that, that's an employee terrorist. And when you have an employee terrorist, you need to eradicate the terrorist from your organization. That's a pretty harsh thought process. However, if you leave that person in place and they continue to cause problems behaviorally, every single person in the company knows you're not serious about your culture. We would not keep that individual, no matter how well they perform. It doesn't matter. It's not about performance.
But you would coach them up and give
I would
them every
absolutely
opportunity.
First, I would set the standards and expectations. Everybody is, I promise you equality in terms of how I'm going to coach you. I don't promise you equal results.
Right. Okay.
So the standards come first. The coaching comes behind that. And then if they can make the modification, you've won. You've got the person to, be culturally supportive. If they're not willing to do that, you've got to make the hard decision to let that person go.
Right.
And your company will be better off long term. It's a short-term hit, but the long term will be better.
Yes or no? Would termination be a last resort?
Yes, always. And they should never be surprised by it.
Amen.
And I also think, the word entitled obviously is the trigger word for all of us there. But like you said, the numbers don't lie. I would look at the numbers, and as a sales leader, or owner, I'd get out there and make sure they're delivering the customer experience that is consistent with what you want from the company to get those metrics. And like you said, if they're worthy, then by all means, I'm going to allow somebody to basically do something that others can't do. If this person can put up certain numbers, that's what I'm going to allow.
Can I comment on the terrorist thing? Ask yourself a simple question. What will the reaction of everyone else in the company be if they learn tomorrow morning that person's fired? Would it be a celebration? That tells you all you got to know if he's causing that kind of problem.
And sometimes
It usually is.
And sometimes if you cut down the large trees, the smaller trees and the grass and the shrubs underneath will grow. All right.
That's good. Say that again.
Sometimes if you cut down the big trees, the smaller trees and the shrubs and the flowers and the plants and the grass underneath the trees will grow. So
Dude,
everybody
that's
else
some
on the
Ralph
team.
Waldo Emerson right there.
Slow to hire, quick to fire.
All right. So as a sales or service dispatcher for a small company, what is the best way that we could encourage the service and sales guys and gals to maintain consistency and positivity? I think this is right in your wheelhouse.
Well, I just want to make sure I understand the question, so my 90 seconds didn't run yet. What's the best way we can do that?
Best way we can encourage the sales and service guys and gals to maintain consistency and positivity. Yes, the will is kicking in.
Yes. Teach the fundamentals and reteach the fundamentals and reteach the fundamentals. The blocking and tackling of being an effective service technician or a comfort advisor. Consistent sales results come from consistent behaviors.
Did you write a book on this?
I wrote a book on that, right? Random sales results come from random behaviors. So if I want consistent results, I've got to demand consistent behaviors. But we got to teach, and this is Gary's thing. You got to teach them. You can't just expect it without giving them the teaching, giving them the education. Teach the fundamentals. In the sales process, for example, there's 4 fundamentals, RISC, relationships, investigate, solve and sell, and then ask for the order. And as long as you're doing those things on a consistent basis, you're going to have results. So make sure they understand the fundamentals. When you see them having a little dip, get back and say, let's work on the fundamentals today, right? The basics.
G-Man.
Consistency comes from good, clear ideas, clarity of purpose. That's culture. That's from the leadership side. So I would ask the question of that individual or that company, do they have clarity of what the culture do they want? You've got to create an environment of prosperity and success. You have to demand that. But you also have to be the leader that produces that. You can't walk in the building with your head down and be cranky today. I mean, you might be cranky, but you have to actually be positive. You have to create that environment. And then I think it's a reinforcement process. I spend 50% of my time in my leadership basically teaching people and coaching people and helping them understand the why. The why is why people will feel good about what they're doing and the purpose. So if you're not going to coach and you're not going to teach and you're going to spend your time worrying about process, it's probably not going to happen. So you need to be a leader. And leaders, they understand that culture is what they're driving.
Attitude reflects leadership. I am an aspirational. Okay, yeah. All right.
All right, he's off the willet.
I'm off the questions. I am an operational.
On to the boss off.
Yes. Yeah, it's the will.
Yeah, let's go from 45%.
It's the rye. I need to go back to the bourbon. I need to go to the bourbon or the scotch. The rye is kicking my. All right. So I am an operational manager for a large mechanical contractor in Florida, but we only do HVAC. What is the best way to go about adding plumbing to our business with a focus on installations aside from getting the licensing and other requirements sorted out? And I know this is something both of you have tried to do in both of your businesses. So let's go here first.
Well, I think the first thing is that you want a decent business plan that how we are going to integrate plumbing in. So that would be the first thing that I would want to have is an understanding of, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? The second thing would be there's 2 avenues, okay? One would be organic with your existing customer base once you have the licenses. Email drip campaigns, telling your customer base that you're actually in plumbing, those are avenues that you can enter in with your existing base. The second avenue is probably the most desirable one, and that would be to acquire a small plumbing outfit. And it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be scaled. You want to integrate that company as a tuck-in, bring that set of competencies into your organization. You're going to bring new customers as well, and so you're going to absolutely be in the plumbing business at that point. You might find some information on that on adding a vertical on the EGI website under the best practices.
Adding a vertical, loving it. Loving it.
You might find it there.
Yeah, and so acquire a company, okay? You or somebody on your team could go out and get a license and start to do it internally again, migrating to your customers, or you could do what this gentleman, I believe, tried to do, which is hired some plumbers and tried to start that division.
Yeah, and it didn't work. I'll give you a better example of one of my clients, because we really struggled with that, like really struggled, and lost a lot of money trying to do it. What I would say, it's a simple idea of cross-marketing. I've got a client of mine, a couple of them actually have done this very successfully, large HVAC companies with service agreement customers in the range of 15 to 20 to 25,000. They did a very simple thing. They decided one day they wanted to get in the plumbing business. They went and found a plumber with a license, and they took all their 20,000 service agreement customers and called them up and said, oh, by the way, we may not have told you, but your service agreement entitles you to a free plumbing inspection. Mm-hmm. They hired a bunch of green plumbing technicians, taught them the basics on how to do an inspection and look for opportunities. And within 3 years, 4 years, they had a huge plumbing company. I'm talking to the tune of $15, $20 million in plumbing work, simply by doing free plumbing inspections as a complement to their their service agreement maintenance on their HVAC systems.
You simplified that, but that operator is one of the best operators in the industry, and he had a plan before he did that.
Well, sure. I mean, I had 90 seconds.
You still got another 20 left.
And you got to have a plan to do that. Don't do that without a plan.
Thank you.
And you know, another good thing is find somebody who's having success, who's already done this. And so, you know, Gary's company happens to be a client of ours, and they're trying to launch into that vertical. And so the people asked me what I would do, and I said I would talk to these two guys that I know. And so I hooked them up with some people that I knew that already did this and did it successfully. So I hooked those guys up, and those conversations are beginning, and we'll see what happens in a future episode.
Imagine what you would do though as an HVAC company with 20,000 free plumbing inspections.
Exactly.
You think you might get some plumbing work out of it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yes.
But that's a mechanical contractor, and they probably don't have the club agreements in the database.
Let's take one last question here, and then we'll close out this session here. So when you, and this is an interesting one, when you brand as a Cadillac or a Mercedes of your market, how even after you showed value to the customer against competitors, do you tactfully build the case for why your company should gain the business as opposed to throwing and again, this is one of those ones that got cut off, so I'm not sure what they...
I would just say this. The bottom line is real simple. If you are a value-based contractor, and Gary's got a lot about this, about positioning, you know, you can't position yourself as the Lexus dealer and have the Kia prices, whatever, and he'll talk about that, I'm sure. But the bottom line is, if you're a value-based contractor, and you get to the end of your presentation, you can present options, and they're surprised that you're way more expensive, you haven't done your job. Right. Listen, when you're that kind of company, and those are the greatest companies, or I shouldn't say that, but they're great companies, right? When you're doing your presentation, it's like building a legal case. Brick after brick after, you have to build a wall of evidence. It's not any one thing, it's the entire presentation, the warranties, the superior installations, the superior recruiting, the superior training, everything that you do as a company, and you build this wall of evidence. And when homeowners see that kind of presentation, they should know, like, this is not the cheap guy. If they're surprised at your price and you're that value-based contractor, you haven't done your job.
Yeah.
Really don't have anything to add. The positioning strategy has to match up with the idea of whatever your brand is. Brand comes first, and then the positioning and what you sell underneath of that matches up. So Walmart doesn't promise you a whole bunch of things. Kia doesn't necessarily promise you a whole bunch of things. You're expecting what what the price represents. So he's exactly right.
And you can either be, I wrote an article on this, I believe
What was that last part there?
I said, you are perfectly right.
Wow.
Exactly.
I never thought I'd hear that. My life is, I could be struck by lightning right now and die a happy man. Gary Alex says I was right.
So you can either be a Walmart contractor or a Neiman Marcus contractor, but you cannot be both. And the thing is, you could be anywhere along that spectrum. The challenge is if you're just in the middle, these are the companies that just start to go out of business. Macy's is struggling. Kmart went under. Sears went under. All these other department stores go under. The ones that are either the premium brand or
they had no identity.
Yeah, and nobody beats Walmart. Nobody is going to beat the lowest price.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've heard contractors say they want to be the Walmart in their town. Walmart operates on how many billions of dollars of revenue? Yeah. You can make a lot of money at 2% net income on billions of revenue. I don't know any contractors that big. So that Walmart strategy doesn't really work unless we've got a big commercial contractor here in the state. Right. And they operate on tiny margins, but they're doing $100 million a year. Yeah. Right? But if you're not doing that kind of volume, you really can't be the Walmart company.
Grocery stores operate on 1% to 2% margins, yes. And they're selling, billions. And so you need milk and bread, and it's a repetitive product, so they can operate on those low margins. We're getting a life cycle of maybe 8 years in Florida, 10 to 12 years in Phoenix, 15 years in Columbus, Indianapolis. So you got to think in terms of your product life cycle. That's why the service agreements are so important.
Yes. And so we also, if you actually can attend the Elevated Consumer Buying Experience class, we dive specifically into this
Is that
very
something
topic.
Available through
Through
a
EGIA?
nonprofit?
Yes.
Oh, EGIA?
EGIA. You can
I think
attend
you
a
and Russ
live
do that.
event class.
I think you and Russ do that, don't you?
Yes, Russ and I each do that class. Yes, we do. So that's going to close out this round of questions. We have a bunch more to get to in future episodes. So let's raise a glass to our
Cheers.
members for submitting some questions.
Here's the EGI members, all 1,200
We
of them.
appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Yep.
We appreciate you guys.
Something else we should talk about is 1,200 members now in EGIA.
1,200 members in
That's a
climbing.
good membership.
And growing.
And growing.